Okay, excellent. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Grove. My name is Chad Bartlett from Grove, and yeah, really excited to be hosting you this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. There's many other places you could have been, but the next 40 to 45 minutes we hope is going to be really valuable for you in terms of a little bit of an understanding of the complexity around managing your own cybersecurity resources and skills and maintaining those skills within the organization. Also, happy Cyber Awareness Training Month, actually. So hopefully that, obviously there should be a number of cybersecurity professionals on the session. Hopefully you do have a little bit of a plan for this month, but if not, you can just have a look at the Q&A chat, and there is a link there that potentially can help you out with some content for the next month to share and help your users become a little bit more cyber aware. Yes, so I'm going to hand over very quickly to the Grove cybersecurity experts, but I just want to do a quick introduction to our two very valuable customers that we have on the line with us today. We're going to form part of the customer panel. So we're very excited to be hearing from Shana, who's the Deputy CISO for E&L Group, a massive conglomerate and one of our long-standing customers all the way from Mauritius. So we really appreciate you joining, Shana. Thank you very much. And then Jack Horn, who is the IT manager for another one of our brilliant customers all the way in Johannesburg. Really appreciate you joining, Jack, to share some of your insights a little bit later, once the Grove cyber experts have given a little bit of a contextual view of the content that we're wanting to focus on today, which is, as you can see, from complexity to clarity, mastering cybersecurity amidst skills shortages. Yeah, so I mean, we're all very well aware that, you know, cybersecurity continues to scale and to grow, and it is a continued risk for us and all of our organizations. And obviously maintaining skills and growing skills in the organization is a big challenge around cybersecurity. In fact, I was just reading an article which was published by CISO Online. They actually did an ISACA online report, a survey where they surveyed 2,100 cybersecurity professionals. And basically they were saying that effectively there's been a big surge in trying to bring new skills into the cybersecurity marketplace, into the talent pool. But some of those skills are even struggling to get entry-level cybersecurity jobs placements. So it's a perpetuating cycle and is very challenging. Different reasons why cybersecurity professionals are potentially leaving their organizations. So Chris, I'm hoping that you're going to shed a little bit of light in terms of, you know, where we are in terms of the market around cybersecurity skills, and of course shedding some light around how Grove has helped a number of our global customers to build a little bit of clarity and a SOC around their Darktrace services that they've subscribed to. So yeah, Chris, I'm going to hand over to you. You're the head of our managed services, so I'm sure that you'll be able to shed some light. And then also from Grove side, we've got Brett Murray, who's our head of business development, and then Johan Kritzinger, who's also on the line today. So we really value your skills and experience on this session today. So thanks, Chris. I'm going to hand over to you.
Well, thanks, Chad. Thanks for that wonderful intro. So my name is Chris. I head up the cyber services for Grove. I'm also the product manager, dSOC, which is our flagship managed service. So Grove has always offered some sort of service in terms of the customers we put forward. But we've since, over the last 18 months, managed to package that into a wonderful offering that cuts across a couple of editions as well. So I'm going to get started with the first part. So the first part of the session, I'm going to talk about some of the findings about research that was conducted. And this just gives us an idea of what the challenges are. There are three sets of graphs I'll be sharing with you. And it's all conducted by research in collaboration with Splunk and Enterprise Strategy Group. And it features some of the thoughts and insights and opinions, more importantly, of over 1,500 different respondents over 10 countries and through 15 different industries. So it's quite a complex or quite a widespread survey or research that was conducted by one of the leading brands in cybersecurity today. So this graph, and what I've done is I've highlighted some of the stuff in blue, for example. You'll see on the graph, there's a couple that are in blue, and those are linked specifically to the skills shortage and the lack of skills within the cybersecurity space. So if we look at that, there are in the top 10, there are at least 4 of the findings are around skills. Now, across the board, you'll see that there's a wide range of challenges that respondents have identified, and no one type actually dominates. You'll see by the numbers, 31%, 27%, so it's quite widespread. And like I said, I've highlighted the ones that are associated to skill shortage, and what really gets my attention is that our staff lacks the skills to deal with sophisticated threats. So that's quite a challenge, in that we have these sophisticated threats and we're not able to deal with them effectively. And that's where those real ominous threats creep in and cause a lot of havoc, or wreak a lot of havoc in our environments. And then if we look at the generalized problem of spending too much time addressing or tackling emergencies, that comes out on top. And there's a number of reasons why we're always in reactive mode, and not a lot of solutions, actually. Companies experience cyber attacks by the thousands, and that's why the reactive stance is inevitable. So, security teams do their best to get ahead of these unknown attack vectors, but there's always new technique creeping in. And then also, if you consider compliance, that's always getting more complex. As the increase in sophistication of technology, of attacks, the ways in which we use data, the methods of attack, all of that means that the standards, the regulatory standards, will also rise or become more complex, which means stricter controls and more complexity and so on and so forth. And then if you look at the right side of that, I've also spoken a bit about the state of the internal SOC. And generally, internal SOCs, this is where you build your own capacity. Usually there's a feeling of being overwhelmed by the complexity of the tasks and the lack of that necessary manpower we spoke about. So the majority of SOCs, in fact, 64% of them, are struggling also with multiple tools. So now not only do you have to deal with this massive amount of tasks and the lack of skill to deal with those tasks, you now also have multiple interfaces looking at those various areas. And all of this, of course, hinders our ability to do a thorough and also a timely investigation. And then, of course, to build a response around those. If you look at almost half of the respondents, they say they are struggling with this multiple disconnected tools. So, you have to check, for example, 4 different systems or 3 different systems, whatever it is you have in your digital estate. It takes a lot of time to do that and to be effective. So the consequence, of course, is that those alerts that need proper investigation, they are ignored due to that limited SOC capacity. And this neglect, because within that amount of alerts, you're going to find the genuine threats. And with this neglect, that increases the risk of a successful cyber attack. And of course, that undermines the effectiveness of all the controls we've put in place. The next graph looks at some of the tactics that or that these respondents are looking to try and address the talent challenges. So the first one right on top, you'll see there that it is invest more in training. And some of the interesting things that I thought is really quite unusual. Well, not unusual. I mean, it's quite expected, I guess, in the world of ICT and cybersecurity. If you consider that the people who are responsible, for example, for the servers, there is an expectation that they would be responsible for the security of those servers. And so with the networks, you'd expect the same. Across desktop support, you'd expect the same. So that's some of the methods that the respondents are using, is to try and take that task of IT security and spread it across the entire organization. So all of these mitigation tasks have a some level of success. But I think what we as Grove like to put forward or push is invest in more training. Yes, that's definitely required. But also increase the use of MSSPs or outsources, because that's where you can actually leverage off that skill shortage. One of the greatest, big issues with building capacity internally is that capacity will leave at some point. Now, as the skills or the staff become more skilled, more experienced, they will move on. And then there's that reinvestment needed to make sure that that level of skill is always there. And that's where MSSPs can play a pivotal role in ensuring that there's at least an acceptable level or a required level of expertise. And that required level can't be on the lower end. It has to be on the upper end. Now, if you think about IT, the error the margin for error with hiring somebody in desktop support is quite high, where you could get away with somebody who's still learning. But when it comes to cybersecurity, that margin for error is much lower. If somebody gets it wrong or the team gets it wrong, it may have dire consequences for the business. So these are some of the tactics that's been used by the respondents, and some of them will have, like I said, some level of effectiveness, and some will have to be combined with others in order to be effective. And then one other graph that I wanted to share is how business leaders measure the success. So as IT, we may well have what we think is successful. We may consider that the number of successful attacks, as it shows in the chart, or the number of incidents detected and inspected, and so on and so forth. And there might be a disconnect between how the business leaders measure our success and how we measure success. And one of the things that shines in this report is right at the top, 34% say that security efficiency metrics such as mean time to detect or mean time to define, and also mean time to respond or recover and repair. Now, those are all linked to resilience. So you'll see in this little block over here, it talks about detect, respond, and recovery are key to effective resilience, and that's where we need to be. Our leadership structure is looking at the time that it takes after we've identified something and after we fix something, and that's the real measure, because that's where you build resilience, is mitigating that time between the MTDD and the MTTR. And this is very interesting to know what our leadership is looking at in terms of how they measure our success. Like I said, we might have our own success measures internally, but there may be a disconnect. What I'd like to talk about now is the reason that we are having the session today. It's around what Grove offers in terms of managed services. So we've developed a service called dSOC, and it's aptly named because it is focused around Darktrace. We've built this over a number of years, like I said, 18 months to 24 months, we built this service. There has been other services that have stemmed before this, but this is what we've culminated to, and this is what we now offer. It is a service that is, like I said, focused around Darktrace. All the intelligence we gather is based on what Darktrace gives us. Now, there's a couple of things to mention in that space, in that Darktrace has, over the years, increased its drive for integrations. So, for example, Darktrace can integrate with EDRs, other NDRs. We can integrate into the firewalls of firewall systems, and in doing so, extending the respond component of Darktrace. And all of that, of course, comes part and parcel of our services, of our service offering to customers. So, and through that integration, we're able to extend the coverage of Darktrace. Now, Darktrace is usually installed in a very strategic location on the network, and therefore it picks up everything that comes and goes within the environment. And then to expand on that, we also have the integration that gives us a little bit more insight into what's happening outside of Darktrace as well. So let me just move on to the next part. And this is about the value propositions. And this is why we think that our service offering is good. So the first thing is the time to value. Now, if you consider the SOC example that I mentioned earlier, full SOC. A full SOC requires that you collect logs en masse everywhere all the time, and you're ingesting those thousands and thousands of log information, not just from one location. You'd collect it from, for example, your authentication or your directory services component. You'd be collecting from your databases. You'd be collecting from the front ends. Wherever you have a system and it generates logs, it will be then ingested by that SOC service. Now, that SOC service could be nurtured over time. So, for example, you could focus on your firewalling and routing and switching initially, and then move on to your different areas such as your AD or your directory services, moving into your databases, and all of that takes time. Now, in contrast, when you subscribe to dSOC, the service, and I must iterate that it is based on Darktrace specifically. So if you have Darktrace in your environment, and I hope all of you do already, if you have Darktrace in your environment, then the dSOC leverages what has been learned by Darktrace already. So all the acknowledgements that have been made, all the learnings that Darktrace has done, all the patterns of life become relevant. And Darktrace or dSOC leverages off that. So immediately after the setup, which is maybe a couple of days, we start generating reports based on that intelligence that Darktrace already has about your environment. So that's quite important. The time to value is of paramount importance as far as we're concerned. Then, of course, maximize your Darktrace investment. This is what we aim to do. We want to make sure that you've spent the money on Darktrace, you've made that investment in Darktrace. Therefore, you need to make sure to leverage all of the value out of Darktrace. We also offer a unique response SLA. Now, the reason why that I talk about the response SLA as an MSSP that is part of the package or the solution. As an MSSP, you have to offer those SLAs. You have to be governed by a response timeline. The reason that I bring it up is that Darktrace themselves won't give you an SLA, and for good reason. Darktrace is primarily a technology vendor, and that's where they focus. That's where they're able to expand and improve the product. Whereas Grove, besides our sales capability, we also have a strong services capability. And part of that is offering those service level agreements that are governed by timeframes. And it's very simple. We don't try to overcomplicate it. It's very simple. There's a 60-minute SLA, there's a 4-hour SLA, and a 24-hour SLA. And we can define those SLAs as we go along with our customers. The SLAs are not necessarily cast in stone. They can change, and we can introduce different levels of complexity in terms of what falls within different SLAs. Helping customers achieve the full Darktrace cyber maturity scale from day one. So what this is about being more proactive and less reactive. Reactive, when you're in the reactive space, when you're in that perennial reactive state, it's probably the most expensive place to be. It's also the most time-consuming space to be, because all you're trying to do there is to recover from something that has happened. Now, Darktrace has a wonderful component called Respond, and Respond does react to those very high level, very high severe issues and takes action immediately. But we need to get over to that. We need to take an offensive approach to our defense. And that's what this is about. It's about making sure that you are able to achieve that cyber maturity scale. And there is a slide after this one that talks about that, and I'll cover that in a bit more detail. We offer a proactive 24/7 active monitoring service. In the past, we've always offered a 24/7 service. And for example, we would send you daily reports, and those reports would highlight the findings of the day, and we'd provide our input into those findings. So we'd provide a bit more detail about what we think the risk is, what we think where it came from, and how far it's spread with the environment, and what we think you should be doing about this particular risk. And once you get that report, you can then spark a conversation with our team who are available to you 24/7. So, for example, you see something on a report, whether it's today or 2 days later, and you ask a question of our team, you put it forward to us via email or via telephone, we would respond and get involved in what's called an assisted investigation. And that means we will get you to a point where that risk is mitigated to a level where it's no longer causing harm or no longer has potential to cause harm. I must stress that at this, we don't take responsibility for the actual mitigation. We're not going to run that last mile scan, antivirus removal, or maybe worst case scenario, reformat that machine. We're not going to set up your recovery VLAN, for example. We're simply going to tell you that you need to set up a recovery VLAN, and then take those machines that are identified as infected, and then recover them within that particular VLAN. But we'll guide you in that and make sure that it gets done so that there is no potential for additional harm once we've removed the threat. De-risking the cyber skills gap, and that's essentially why we are talking today. If you consider what it takes to build capacity, a full 24/7 cybersecurity capacity, the recruitment process is time consuming. You need to make sure that you hire the right people. Then there's the retention, to retain the people, and of course the continuous training. Now, if you're not a major multinational corporation or in financial institution, you don't really need to build the capacity internally. You should focus on your core business, of course, not focusing on building cybersecurity capacity. And that's where we come in. We offer a multi-layered approach to cyber skills. So we have, for example, 3 layers of skills. The first one would be layer 1. And these are the analysts that you'd be exposed to, those people who will be creating those daily reports, highlighting where the risk is. And then also the people that you can spark a conversation with. The reports we receive are not unmanned from unmanned mailboxes. They come from analysts, and you can spark conversations with the analysts. The next level of analyst is the level 2 analyst. And they're usually team leads. They usually take control of a team of analysts, and they are there to provide that second level of support to the first layer. And they're also the first point of escalation. So in the unlikely event that our layer 1 analysts cannot assist or get to a point where we are reducing the harm, then this is when the level 2 analysts will come in. They are more experienced, maybe more exposure within the cyberspace generally. And then on top of that, we have the layer 3 analysts. Now, the layer 3 analysts, these are the analysts who are subject matter experts. They've got a lot more experience, and also the second point of escalation. And I should also mention at this stage that all those levels of analysts that we have, all of them are Darktrace certified. They go through a 12-week learning program, and they ingest as much information as they can about the Darktrace platform. They go through the full training offered by Darktrace, and you as a customer would already have access to that. Our analysts go through that as well. We've also created our own curriculum, and that curriculum serves 2 purposes. First, to help our customers get skilled up, and second of all, to train our analysts as part of that process. So they go through this rigorous training learning plan, and then they become eligible to write the exam. The exam is usually 2 days or spread over 2 days. The first part is a theory part, some questions that are asked and responded to on an online platform. And then there's the second part of the exam is where there's a practical component to it, where they are put under stress, as it were, and then they have to respond with solutions as opposed to just answering questions about this platform. So quite a rigorous learning program, and all of our analysts have gone through that learning program and are fully qualified on the Darktrace platform. And then also, just to expand on the services we offer around those analysts, is that our analysts only focus on Darktrace. So they're not looking at Darktrace and perhaps another system and other systems and trying to provide services around those. They focus on Darktrace specifically. They might be moved around to other areas, but when they are focused on Darktrace, that's where their focus lies. They're not looking at or focusing on other systems at the same time. Of course, they shift around, but when they focus on Darktrace, that's their focus for the period. And then the last part, of course, is we're all price sensitive. We reckon that dSOC, Grove's dSOC, our flagship managed service, comes at a fraction of the cost. If you consider all the elements I mentioned, recruitment, training, retaining, and then also that 24/7 capacity. To have a truly 24/7 service, you need to have at least 6 people. You could maybe get away with it with 1 or 2 less, but it would be really, really pushing the boundary in terms of what you can achieve out of that team. So if you think about 6 resources round the clock, looking at your system, you think about the level of these resources. People, if you build your own team, they might come with some level of experience, but with our analysts, they get exposed to many industries across the globe. We have customers from East Coast US right through up until Mauritius in Africa. So we get to see a lot of different kinds of threats. So yes, there might be the top 3 that affects everybody globally, but we get to see which ones are more relevant in specific industries within the different sectors. This is the Darktrace cyber maturity scale, and it's all about the level of interaction, in other words, the amount of time you spend in Darktrace, and the level of proactiveness will increase, of course, as your maturity increases. So if you look at this part of the year, the now resident threats, this is where you rely heavily on the automation of Darktrace. So the respond component, for example, and that's where you would be as a newbie to Darktrace. But as you move along, you're starting to look at higher scoring devices, top scoring model breaches, attack phase investigation, and in here you're trying to find, for example, the areas of risk, areas of vulnerability, and dwell time. It's been reported that anything from 2.5 months to 6 months is typical dwell time before there's an actual attack. And during that time, because we play in that space of reconnaissance, the daily frequency ensures that we see things in the early stages of a typical kill chain. And usually, or definitely, not usually, definitely, if you identify those areas early on, it's the easiest time to get rid of that threat. As it moves down the kill chain, it becomes more and more difficult until you get to the last step, where you are being reactive. So the reason for me showing you this, of course, is that this is a great maturity scale to try and achieve internally with your Darktrace appliance, or your team at least. But the reason for showing this is that when you onboard dSOC, represented by a little apple, which you'll see up here, we offer all of these out of the box. So when you subscribe to dSOC, you get all of these capabilities right from the start. There's no need to build that capacity. I'm going to the next part of the deck is about some of the operational insights that JK will share with us. Some of the things that he and his team have picked up over the years working with Darktrace and our customers.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to try and get through this as clear as possible. But just before I get into those sections, just to add to what Chris said, for a very long time, security has been very focused on the tech rather than the resource. And so everybody that works in IT of any form always knows that there's a resource issue. There's always not enough people to go around to get everything done, and you have role sharing and difficult things like that. So one of our main vision points of dSOC was to essentially create a SOC that then becomes an extension of your team. And it's quite aptly named dSOC, being Darktrace SOC, but I also like to see it as dSOC, that we're essentially dSOCing the SOC. We're trying to make it more agile. We're trying to make it quicker, simpler, not as heavy processed and sort of rule-based as you get with standard SOCs, obviously provided that you have Darktrace. Now, again, the big value point of Darktrace, apart from what it does in its natural form, is its integration points. Chris also mentioned this. We partnered with other security systems. We can integrate that into your Darktrace, and it effectively enhances the information that dSOC can provide to you on a daily basis. Now, in terms of more specific points, Chris, can you just move on just a little bit so the points actually show? There we go. So I wanted to just quickly explain some dSOC differentiators, us versus a SOC. So essentially us trying to simplify a SOC. And one of those is communication enhancement. So there's quite a number of things that we do within this service element. One of the things is we provide daily triage reports in terms of, what happened roughly within the last 24 hours. Now, these reports are not auto-generated. I mean, if you've done some development, API and integration, it's actually fairly easy to automate this. But the problem you get with that is there's no intelligence behind that. So we have a group of analysts that literally sit on our customer environments every day, and they review what happened on the environment, and they draft a report with the details. So you, as the customer, when you receive that, very much at a glance will understand what's been happening, where do I need to take action, what requires immediate mitigation, remediation, and what can I leave till later. And the value that we get with using actual skilled analysts to do this, which I think is actually fairly self-explanatory, but there's critical thinking is involved, and industry experience comes into play, and the guys can do external research, etc., which obviously you're not going to get with just an automated generated report. Now, because it's analysts working on these, they're not sent from no reply addresses either. They're actually sent from the analyst's mailbox. So you receive that report. If you've got any questions, if you need to jump on a call quickly, if you need to do anything with regards to the information that was provided, you can very easily reply to that and simply ask, hey, can we just jump on a Teams session? I don't understand this particular alert, so I just need to understand a bit more, or whatever the situation is. Now, the next point is personal relationships. Now, the more the team works with the customers, they start to understand sort of how the business operates. They understand, who are the admins and kind of the stuff they do, what are their roles. And those are also things that they tend to take in consideration when they review, the alerts and things that are being triggered. And like I said, because we try and have this sort of open channel of communication between us and our customers, it really helps build those personal relationships. And then again, something that I think that is fairly obvious, but we are 24/7, obviously. That's another big point that Chris made, but we are what I like to refer to as true man 24/7. So it is, again, pretty easy to do some fancy phone routing, and you can essentially have guys on standby, let's say, during the night or whatever the case is, but we opted to actually go with the expense of having, personnel on duty during that time. So honestly, if you've got a situation 2 o'clock Christmas morning, heaven forbid, there will be somebody on the other side that you can contact. If you've got the active monitoring service we offer, we will in fact contact you proactively and let you know, hey, we're seeing ransomware, we're seeing data leakage or data exfiltration or whatever the critical situation is, and we will stay on the line with you in order to help you fully understand the situation, in order so that you have the necessary information to deal with that. Now, as I mentioned, obviously this is dSOC, meaning Darktrace SOC. So yes, Darktrace is essentially a core component of the service, but our vision is to become an extension of your existing team. Now, some of the things that we've picked up in the time that we've been building the service, as Chris alluded to, again, it's been about 2 years or so building, and we've been quite successful at it. But in the early days, we did have a lot of customers who had issues, because what happens is, Darktrace gets implemented, everything works fine, 6 months pass, and then customers start to make changes within their environment without considering how that affects Darktrace and Darktrace's visibility and its reach of its response service. Now, what we do is, again, one of the elements of our service is we provide monthly health checks. So we help you make sure that your environment is always set most optimally, set correctly. The response service works even if it goes to your sort of very remote satellite offices somewhere, that the system works and it will function as it should in that event that you actually do sit with a crisis. So the old adage of prevention is better than cure is very clear in this instance, and we have seen a drastic reduction in customers struggling with critical situations since we started doing these health checks, and we make sure that everything is set up optimally. Excuse me. Something that's quite interesting, and one of the reasons why I really, really love Darktrace and really enjoy working with the system is it's obviously at its core, it's an NDR. It's a network detect and response service. It obviously has components that allows it to reach out into other sections of your cyber estate. So we're talking, your Office 365, Azure, your email, there's quite a number of things that it can do. But because of the amount of data that it captures, we've been able to use it to investigate things that the system itself is not actually designed to detect. There's this great example that we helped a fairly large bank customer of ours trace fraudulent transactions, and eventually managed to actually catch the guy because of the information that we could see in Darktrace. And Darktrace isn't designed to deal with fraud. It is obviously designed to deal with malicious activity and unusual behaviors within the network. And I mean, fraud you can do using, normal behavior. So it isn't something that the system will trigger. But given enough information about what the customer suspects, and using the incredibly powerful service that Darktrace is, we are able then to at least assist, if not fully uncover situations that are, not always picked up by the service itself. Now, we've been with Darktrace before the service. I mean, we've been with Darktrace for quite a long time, I think about six or 7 years or so. We have a very, very good relationship with them. We communicate with them daily. We've assisted with beta testing with certain things, especially on the partner side. So it's extremely easy for us to, have that communication with them. If there is something about the environment on the customer side that is unusual or, requires maybe a deeper look, it's very easy for us just to get somebody on the line from Darktrace and help with that. And just to conclude, I'm being told that we're running out of time. I could talk about this for hours, to be quite honest. So again, yes, we've got a fully certified dSOC team. We are currently certified on the analytical side, which is obviously what we require for the kind of service that we provide. But the guys are working on the engineering one. I've got a couple of guys who are doing the email one. So pretty much every time Darktrace releases a certification, the guys jump on that and we start working on that in order to just ensure we are certified in every single thing that they can that they provide, so we can support that effectively. And then just my final point, and I'll conclude here, and then I'll hand over to Chad just for the panel discussion. But there are a couple of companies in the world who do services for Darktrace. It is very much a product that you can build services on, much like we did, but we are very much the only one in the world that does it with this level of sophistication. If you're interested, obviously Chris will provide all the information on the service that are included in these packages, but we've got about 5 or 6 very comprehensive service level types that we provide with this product. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time. I'll hand over to Chad now for the panel discussion.
Thanks, JK. That was brilliant. Yeah, I mean, obviously many different comprehensive components and super exciting. So yeah, really appreciate the insights from yourself and Chris. Now we move over just to the panel discussion, which I'll help facilitate. Just in case anybody has any questions, please would you mind just putting them in the Q&A or in the chat, sorry, in the chat. And we'll try and get to that. I know that you've all been waiting for the panel discussion, and we do have two of our very, very valued customers. So Shana Bakhtar, she's on the line all the way from Mauritius, as I said at the beginning, if some of you joined late, from the ENL Group, which is one of the largest conglomerates in the Indian Ocean. So Shana, can you hear me okay? And are you able to speak clearly?
Yes, Chad. Thanks for the introduction.
Okay,
and hi, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Shana. Thanks for that. And Jack Horn, also from, well, is part of the panel, and he's from Ivanhoe Mines. Jack, are you there? He's the IT manager. Are you there?
Hi, Chad. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yeah, thanks so much to both of you for really being open and willing to help share a little bit of your perspectives and insights around dSOC and obviously the Grove managed services around Darktrace. Obviously, you've been customers for different lengths of time. You've got different sort of backgrounds, different experiences, different markets. Because so it is always nice to try and have a panel like this to just get as much insights for the audience that we've assembled here. And yeah, we really appreciate the time. What I'm going to do is just ask a couple of questions. I'll probably start with you, Shana, if that's okay. As we highlighted during the course of the previous speakers, most of our customers globally, and we've got customers in 30 countries around the world, specifically on Darktrace, primarily selected Darktrace as their network detection response tool. And yes, Darktrace does many other things. They've got a fully comprehensive capability across all of your digital assets, but primarily organizations choose the network detection response. So Shana, can you just give a little bit of your perspective in terms of, you know, having an experience with Darktrace, implementing the technology, and then were there any sort of limitations that you encountered when implementing Darktrace, and then, you know, what sort of prompted you specifically to look at additional support, additional layers of managed services from an organization like Grove? Are you able to just share a little perspective on that, if you don't mind?
Sure, Chad. So just to give a little bit of context, Darktrace was one of the first solutions. So when ENL embarked on its cybersecurity journey, Darktrace was one of the first solutions that the group decided to implement in terms of network protection for the group. And we had around 15 to 20 entities under companies in the group and in different sites, etc. So implementing Darktrace was a little bit of a challenge in the beginning. So we had several sites. Not all the sites had the hardware requirements that could for Darktrace. So and once we had Darktrace in place, it was ensuring that the configuration is done right, that the number of alerts that we are getting, we are able to attend to them. And having so many sites with different environment, different user behaviors, different activities, we had so many alerts. We could not determine which one were false positives, which one were genuine, and we had to configure Darktrace based on different networks. So that was one big challenge that we had. Plus, we did not have the resources. So we started with this very small team, and we end up realizing that Darktrace would take like configuring and monitoring all the alerts coming from that tool would require a full-time resource, and the full-time is not even 24/7 monitoring, be only 8 hours per day. So having these constraints, we had to look for somebody to help us, and luckily we have we already knew Growth. We already knew Growth with Mimecast, and we were really satisfied and had really good relationship with Growth. So, and Growth proved us really well in terms of response in any of our challenges that we had. So that is how our journey started.
Okay, that's excellent. Really great to hear that, Shana. And Jack, I suppose the same question, if you don't mind, on your side, if you want to just share a little bit of context in terms of, you know, some of the challenges you faced initially when deploying Darktrace, and sort of why it pushed you to engage with Grove as a managed service around Darktrace.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for the opportunity. So I really wish that I could start this conversation as I saw the advert on the Formula One with Darktrace to say that, hey, that's where I found it the first time, but that's not the case. So normally in business, you start off with governance, and then within governance is cybersecurity. And then that extends off to a discussion where, oh, cybersecurity, love to hate it. And you get to a point where you realize that it's a 70-30 split. Have a look at what you have. No, we covered. We're all good. Then you start looking at 70% of that risk is inside your organization. And that's when the ball starts rolling and you start looking for solutions. And all of these discussions are filled with ifs and buts. And how can we resolve it? What's the solution? And no one can really draw a line in the sand to say, hey, here's the silver bullet. We can solve it in this way. And then that leads off to where you start looking for a solution to be able to address all of these criteria, which is cybersecurity. Then you start to realize again, okay, cool. So let's try and look in-house, get a cybersecurity team in place. We firsthand experienced the lack of skill out there to get the relevant people to actually fill vacancies for cybersecurity. And then you start weighing up the cost for an NDR solution like Darktrace. And then you also realize that you need, this is not a one-person job. You can give them the tools. And you take a step back and say, good, let's see what we have. And then it's a bucket filled of alerts that doesn't make sense. And it's just too much to handle and actually work through. So that's how we actually ended up with Grove, exploring this alternative solution to actually try and save money in the process with not having all the additional expenses for global security across the world to be able to cater for everyone. And at the end of the day, we ended up with Grove, and they ran with the whole POV, POC, and implementation. We haven't looked back a day since.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate those kind words and also those insights from your perspective. I'm gonna jump back to Shana now, just to try and unlock a little bit of your perspectives around the implementation journey that you embarked on. Specifically, I'm talking about with the dSOC, not necessarily with Darktrace per se in terms of the technology, but more around the dSOC. How did you onboard? What was your experience? And maybe just some insights from that side of the picture.
So thanks, Chad. Well, we knew what were the challenges that we had, and we knew what we really required in terms of support. And the start of our journey, we started with a POC, and the rest came quite easily, actually. So with the POC, we knew what kind of support we would obtain, the reports, daily reports, and the triage, how it was done. And then we started, once we confirmed, we started working closely with Grove to plan the integration with their dSOC service. And we've defined the roles, the responsibility, how communication channels, what would be the communication channels between our internal team and Grove's experts. We followed up with sharing our data and integrated logs, alerts, etc. And then one thing led to another. The continuous monitoring, alert management process was in place, and having that in place enabled us to further build on our incident response capability. So we knew who would be responsible for what. And one more thing which was really great that we got is that the Grove team helped our internal staff as well in terms of knowledge transfer, and that helped bridge the skill gaps that we had.
Okay, thanks, Shanna. That was very helpful. Jack, same sort of angle from your side, just in terms of your implementation experience. I know you did mention previously that you did the POC, and that obviously opened your mind up to the possibilities. Do you want to unpack that a little bit more, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. So first criteria, the challenge we faced was just to understand the use case requirements. That is cybersecurity. And I must say, after POC, got the implementation, way up the costs. It just made sense at that stage. And I must say that the benefit we do pull from the dSOC and the threat hunting sessions is actually to have a form of training for people that understand cybersecurity, but they don't understand the intricacies. So a little bit of skills transfer, knowledge transfer from the team. Also rekindled some of my technical guys to actually look more into cybersecurity and creating that interest for them to learn more.
Okay, that's great, Jack. Thanks so much. I know that we are running a little bit out of time. I'd love to carry on for many more minutes, but we need to wrap up quite soon. I'm just going to close with one question for both of you, and maybe, you know, as we are a continually learning organization and continue looking for improvements to the service, would there be and you know, the roadmap team around dSOC are constantly adding new capabilities and features and possibilities. Are there one or two sort of service suggestions that you may want to pass over in this session, just to help our team? Shanna, maybe you can start if you have any.
I really don't have any suggestion right now, Chad.
Okay, no, that's good. I know that we always talk very often, so I know that you will definitely share if there are any. Jack, from your side?
I would like to close it out with a compliment to the Grove team. With a house of skilled professionals in the cybersecurity space available at the top of that.
Okay. Well, that's a great compliment. So I really appreciate that, Jack. And I'm very grateful that you're both seeing huge amounts of benefits and really helping your teams to grow and to learn and to really get the maximum investment from Darktrace and the technology that you've made a significant investment into as an organization, and obviously trying to protect your people and your suppliers and your brand. So yeah, really appreciate you being customers. Thank you so much. And yeah, the session was recorded, so we will be sending it out with a couple of edits. And I don't see any questions from the rest of the attendees, but I am going to just open for maybe 10 seconds if there is anybody that has a question. And I have already checked with our team that were joined previously, Chris, Brett, and Johan. They are very satisfied with the outcome of the webinar, and I think that we've had some amazing insights. So again, really deeply want to thank Shana and Jack. You know, it's so important for us to get external customer validation for these managed services. You know, we can talk as much as we want as the partner here, but you know, you're really feeling it and experiencing it at the grassroots there, and so we really appreciate your being on this discussion. And I see there is one thank you from one of the panelists. Didier, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to wrap it up there, everybody. So yeah, again, thanks so much for your time. You could have been many other places, but you chose to be here with us. Thanks to the Grove team of cyber experts for their experience and skills and knowledge that they've just transferred onto the session. And yeah, we hope to see you on another one of Grove's webinars very soon. And thank you, Shana and Jack, again. Have a good afternoon and rest of week, and we'll talk very soon.